ければ。
Welcome to Gallifrey Stands. I'm Dr. Squee, and with me joining me this week to talk about Doctor Who Locks, where we go animated and we break the fourth wall more than ever. Please welcome Kenton Hall, my guest companion this week.
Hello, hello, hello. Thank you for having me again.
It is always a pleasure to have you here, sir. How's everything with yourself?
Yeah, I think it's fine. Wouldn't be the format if it was like everything is terrible. Let me open up deeply about my personal problems. No, it goes. I'm a freelance writer. It's as good as can be for someone who's made such poor life choices.
The life choices are there to be made poorly.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's good because that's my best skill.
It's why we got on so well.
How are you? How are you? That's the.
Yeah, it's a funny and busy old time. So yeah, as I've been sort of teasing to the audience, there will be some reveals and revelations coming up soon, and some exciting projects. And I sort of have mentioned Squee Fest is coming up, so there's going to be a proper announcement about that, and many other fun shenanigans coming this way.
I do like a fun shenanigan.
Well, yeah, I mean, you wouldn't like a non-fun one, would you?
Nothing worse in this life than a lackluster shenanigan.
Exactly, and God knows we've all been there once in our life. So this week we're talking about Lux.
Yes.
I mean, I must say, like, there are things I like better than other things in this episode, but I will say the amount that I am pleased with these first two episodes, that it feels to me like the course correction, even though the series were done back to back, is quite good. Like there are different changes between season 2 and season 1. I'm kind of glad they made that decision. How are you so far finding?
I'm fine, but I liked season 1 just fine. I think the problem with is a lot of the online discourse around RTD2, which is just ridiculous to say.
Yes.
Has been so it drives me mad. Like just the utter lack of media literacy in most of the online discourse. And also what infuriates me is that particular brand of, I'm going to put fan in the most heavily inverted commas I possibly can, because it's usually people that seem to know absolute jack all about Doctor Who. Is this like, they always go, why don't they get good writers? And like, well, Russell T Davies, one of the greatest television writers of his generation. How about you get in the sea? You just don't like it, and that's fine. That's fine. You not liking something is fine. But the absolute tripe that people talk. I mean, people talk about some people online talk about last season like it was some kind of disaster. A disaster that had Boom and Dot and Bubble and 73 yards in it. Like there was some like prime examples of great Doctor Who in that series, and Ncuti's a great Doctor, but people, they say the same bland, boring things online. Like I would, if it weren't for my passionate advocacy for free speech, I would suggest rounding up anyone that has typed the words Doctor Woke on a keyboard and having them rounded up and pushed off of a cliff like
No, no,
en masse. But they're entitled to that shared, so-called shared opinion that they totally came up with on their own, and is absolutely not a knee-jerk reaction to something they've read on a Reddit comment.
so you've got no strong feelings about it.
God save us from people who don't understand that anyone, regardless of what side, post the original meaning of woke. When woke first came introduced as an idea, it was a beautiful thing about being awake. The word has been corrupted beyond all recognition now, and anyone who uses it unironically at the moment at which they use it, perhaps not in other aspects of life, but in the moment in which they use it unironically, they are an idiot, an absolute pudding-brained idiot. Like there's no meaning to it anymore. It's become this absolutely lazy description, regardless of whether you're for or against. It's the laziest thing. Articulate what you mean. Say what you mean. Say what you're for. Say what you're against. Don't wrap everything up and try to stick it into 4 letters that used to mean something great and now mean nothing at all. Jesus.
Now, when I said about course correction, I was a little bit more nuanced than the argument which you are.
No, but
I'm aware of the argument, the argument of which you're mentioning, not your argument. Sorry, pardon me. Of what you are talking. But yeah, I mean, to me, when I say course correction, the things for me are like stuff like. It was just in that first series when it came back, and Russell T Davies said this repeatedly. It's like, like with his choice of Ruby's mum being no one, and it like we don't need rules around this because Doctor Who can be anything. To me, it did get to a point where it's like every episode, even the ones which were like, I mean, Dot and Bubble, like you say, was amazing. Doctor Who does Black Mirror. Doctor Who can do so many stars, which I think works really well. You had, is it 72 yards?
73 yards.
73 yards, pardon me. I was 1 out. 73 yards. Like that was a great episode, but it felt like there was an explanation at the end which was missed. Like those are the sorts of things.
Well, to me, that was the best thing about it. That was the best thing about it. Like the ambiguity in storytelling is much underrated.
No, it's different between ambiguity and not having an answer. Like I didn't feel it was ambiguous. I felt like it was, to me, like, and it's nothing to do with like. Certainly, I would never dream like that. If anything, it was more kind of like, oh, RTD, like on any of the other stories, even his past ones, which I haven't been my personal favorites. There was usually a conclusion. Like it could be ambiguous, it could kind of be open, but it just felt like there was something missing in the wrap up to a lot of the first series stories for my liking. Again, it's not saying Russell T Davies is an incredible writer, and a lot of the stories, it kind of frustrated me because it was the stories I really liked, which I wanted I don't know, just that little extra something at the end, and that's.
Yeah, I didn't feel that. The thing to me, and this is the thing, I'm like. And this is not you. This is, again, I'm this significantly vocal minority of online commentators. But there's people who go, oh, but, they've shot it back to back, so how can they course correct for what the fans like? They shouldn't. They shouldn't ever. No one should listen to what the audience is saying at all because they're not television writers. They know nothing about writing television, know nothing about making television. You make the story you want to make. When Doctor Who is in the hands of whatever production team it's in, and I say that about whatever era, what you like or don't like, it's their Doctor Who. It's not your Doctor Who. It's their Doctor Who while they're making it. And they should make exactly the version of the show that they feel passionate about. And it's up to you whether you like it or not. If you start listening to the audience as though it's this homogenous group that all shares the same opinion, do you know what? There's people who kvetched throughout the entire Chibnall Jodie era, and there's just as many people who absolutely loved that era, who 13 was their Doctor, and some of their stories are some of their favorite Doctor Who stories. So should they not have made him that way because this guy over here didn't like it? No, they made the show that they wanted to make, and whether you like it or not is totally subjective, totally up to you. There's things I like and don't like about every era, but I don't think that if I wanted to make my version of Doctor Who, then I have to get to a point in my career where they give me Doctor Who to make. And that's it,
I mean, what you said about 13th Doctor, there was like just for my personal opinion, I thought Jodie was great casting. I thought it had everything to be great, but to me, it just wasn't what I like in Doctor Who. But I've always said it's like if a show's 50 years old or 60 now that you love it. I started saying this when it was 50. I've been saying this for 10 years. Like if a show's that old, it will sometimes not be what you like in it. Like it will sometimes be something else, and that's fine. And it's like again, and I was like, that was my feeling during the 13th era. Like the writing wasn't to how what I like in a Doctor Who story for quite a few of them. There's some of them I really liked, but it was just to my liking. That's fine. Again, it doesn't always have to be catered to me. But when I say something like course, I just want just like with the course correction thing. Like for me, that isn't about like what the fans like. It's I think if you because RTD, I think his second like his style coming back into it, he's made different choices from the first time he came into it. And I think when I say cross correction, I think it's more just like learning. He's learning how he's kind of telling that version of that story, and sometimes that does come up with different ideas. And if you've got two series to make back to back, sometimes you do want to use a different flavor in the second one than the first. And I guess just more to my liking then would be the way of playing.
I think he's just trying different. The thing I liked best about Lux is that it's swaying for the fences, and I'd rather my favorite type of Doctor Who is a Doctor Who that tries things that may not always land. But it's the show where you can try things. It's the franchise where you can try things. I mean, it's you know, as an example, I'm not super keen on the Doctor being trapped on Earth working for UNIT. That's not my favorite type of Doctor Who story. But it doesn't mean that within that there aren't stories that I enjoy. I think that this area has been trying things, and a lot of the. I think when you watch, the problem is now is you've got the problem with the difference between the two Russell T Davies eras of Doctor Who is that you have people that have a very nostalgic attachment to the first RTD series. Yeah. I don't think that fundamentally there's an extraordinary amount of difference in the types of stories being told for 15 that were told for 10. I definitely don't think there's any difference in the level of writing. I think sometimes when I see things that I feel don't round off like you were talking about, is that just my absolute awareness of the thing is that that's sometimes that's a limitation of the format. The 45-minute episode sometimes means things get cut, and things do. Sometimes for reasons of television production, things get sped up or things get cut out that might have, possibly enriched the story if it were a 90-minute version. But that's just the format. That's just one of those things. I think we've had...
Yeah. I was going to say, it's like, I just think where like RTD is an auteur, he is really great at kind of crafts. I get the feeling like if there's an element which has gone out, he has chosen to let that go and kind of like it's not by accident anything he does. I don't think he's one of those producers. So I think if something's not there, he's chosen to like let that go and not be there and leave it open, and that's a distinct choice, definitely.
Yeah.
It's just as I say, it's what you like in the show, and that'll come around every now and again. Like
absolutely, and I don't think regardless of whether you like or don't like a writer either, that they're necessarily going to hit it out of the park 100% of the time, because there are human beings, and some stories gel for different reasons, and then there's all the accidents that come from the production of something. There are stories where I think didn't quite work as well as they might have done in the history of the show, where I can completely see that it was a great idea and possibly even a great script, and then just things don't gel. That's just the nature of television production. Sometimes the alchemy just doesn't happen. A scene doesn't play the way it might have played. An edit doesn't come together the way it might have done, and that's just the nature of human beings making stuff. But it's always like the amount of people I go who just toe this party line of, oh, Peter Capaldi was a great actor, but he got terrible scripts. I'm like, when? What? Which? I can think of maybe 3 Peter Capaldi stories that I don't wish I could have written. because the script, there's nothing wrong with the scripts in the Peter Capaldi image. What people mean is they didn't like the story.
Yeah.
And then they say that's bad writing, and that's not what bad writing is. It's
Yeah, I agree.
Peter Capaldi. We got Mummy on the Orient Express. We got Flatline. We got Deep Breath. We got the entirety of Series 10. We got all these great ideas and people trying things, but people mistake what they don't like for an objective judgment of what good and bad is, and people need to stop that because they're dumb.
I mean, I would say what I particularly enjoyed in these first two episodes, which is one of those things which I think, particularly, I'll say this actually. So, like for Stephen Moffat, I love the fact that he can get kind of like he loves to play about with time, which is something which is just always fascinating me as well, and he loves to get very kind of like twisty turny with his sci-fi, and I love that. Like. And I looked at that from Moffat. What I look for from RTD in my favorite configuration of his reign is when he does go for these kind of like really people-pleasing, fun, rip-roaring adventures. And I think these first two have kind of instilled that. Like the first one felt a bit Flash Gordon-y, kind of like that kind of like adventure kind of fun. This one, like the Doctor becomes a cartoon. You've got the God of Light. You've got cinema. Like it's so fun. Like it's just rip roaring fun. And like in last series, like you say, you kind of named some of my favorite episodes, which were like more towards the darker side as well, which he also does very nicely.
But I mean, I would say, and I don't know if there's many people who really would argue, but that possibly the greatest script Russell T Davies ever wrote for Doctor Who was Midnight.
Yeah, that's a great one.
And that is not the wrong. That is not the.
That goes towards the darker side of his.
But because what Russell T Davies is really, really good at, and always has been across all of his work, is writing people. And I think that's he's one of the writers, and I'd put Stephen Moffat in, that I was already a fan of as a writer before they got anywhere near Doctor Who.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty on record that my favorite Doctor Who writer is Stephen Moffat, closely followed by Douglas Adams. So that kind of tells you what kind of Doctor Who I like best. But then it's like I like what I'm really looking forward to this series is now that we've in basically what's the second half of the order, we're getting the guest writers in en masse coming in over the next 4 episodes, and that's going to be interesting as well. To see which ones you think, okay, I'd really like to see them tackle more stories and some very different voices and stuff. I think the only one who I know, the only one with sort of Doctor Who sort of track record, really, I guess, is Gino Dawson, who wrote Redacted and also a very good 13th Doctor novel, I should say. So it'd be interesting to see what they do with the on-screen version. I think Lux for me is the type of Doctor Who episode I like because it tries stuff, and I don't think every single bit of it landed. But I am certainly very happy that they tried things, even down to the scene that has caused the most controversy online. Well, I think that if you didn't have that, it would be a lesser episode because it shows the show really trying stuff.
I would agree with that. Like, I could guess which bit, but I'll leave it to see what kind of comes up as we go through. But yeah, I thought it was like nice to kind of catch up where we kind of left off last week. We're bouncing off a particular date, which is one of those MacGuffins which is used in Doctor Who kind of a few times. Makes no sense. Like bounce. What is it for that day? Is it for a week? Is it for like? But it's fine. You just want you can't get her home. That's all you need. Perfect.
Yeah,
I don't have a problem with that. I do like the fact that I love the fact they wrote this companion to be a bit more kind of wary of the Doctor going in. A bit more kind of like, can I trust this guy? And I think it kind of works really well. But it's played just in the pocket for my liking of like not going towards, because you can go so far as to make the character unlikable when you do that. Kind of like I think they did a really good job on like on Life of Mars, Ashes to Ashes. As they went on, I think they kind of found how to write for Keely in that, as opposed to John Sims before, and it kind of improved as they kind of got that relationship in the pocket like that. But she was maybe a little bit just the way it was written was just like, so she was against our team in like a, I don't know, but I think the chord they struck on this one was really good of challenging the Doctor without completely pushing away, and I think that is a sort of thing to get. I sort of wish we didn't have to, with every Doctor now, though, do the whole like, right, I'm going to pretend Gallifrey still exists just to tell you later that it doesn't. I feel like we've done that scene, maybe. I don't know. What were your thoughts kind of going into the app?
I'm involved because I think there is always that line that Doctor Who was always having to tread between the arcane and deep-seated knowledge of the long-running fan and the people that turn on Doctor Who sporadically and need the bare bones of the plot, because it is, it's the, there are people who don't watch Doctor Who religiously that need it, and I know that that's a tightrope that the show often has to watch, and there are a couple of times where stuff like that clangs for me, but I understand the reasoning behind it, and therefore I'm kind of like, okay, I'll let that go. But then also there is in universe a natural thing that when we have a new character introduced, we're going to see some core information repeated, simply because that's the way it would function between the Doctor and a new companion.
I just meant the way that the Doctor, like, each time lies about it became like it would just be great. Like I thought with Ncuti, you had this great opportunity where with the bi-generation Saints, like it was like retroactive therapy of having the Doctor let go of some of that stuff to do something a little different. Like, so you could just go, it's like my planet was destroyed. It was by this evil like person. It doesn't have to be the light of the reveal every time.
Rule number one:
exposition.
The Doctor lies.
Yeah, I don't know. It'd just be nice to do, like, because you like RTD always talks, as any showrunner does, about like the fact that you could do that scene where the companion first discovers the TARDIS a million different ways, and it has been done differently for every companion. I don't feel like you could do that with this as well. Like, you don't always have to have the
Yeah, I see where you're coming from. I think there's sometimes narrative shorthand things that the casual, like that. I don't think that's something the casual audience will have expended any time whatsoever over considering whether it's been done before or not at all.
No,
I don't think the person who switches on Doctor Who will have even thought about it outside of the parameters of the story it was happening in. I do wish, as the hardcore, I've read all the new adventures, I've read all the Eighth Doctor adventures, I've heard every Big Finish story that I am. I like, leave Gallifrey alone for 5 seconds, for the love of God. But I understand the storytelling engine that the Doctor not having a home to go to provides in terms of narrative shorthand. So I kind of go, okay, all right. And yeah, no, like I said, I think there are things that are reminiscent, but I think sometimes the speed at which a 45-minute, and this has been a function of the show since 2005, is that sometimes shorthand is required to tell a story that would have once been told over 4 25-minute episodes in a 45-minute episode. That there are shorthand things that get used that you might have played out at a different pace in a different way. Yeah, I'm curious. I'm curious. I really like this Doctor companion pairing. I like the dynamic between them, and I really like the dynamic between Ncuti and Millie Gibson as well. So I'm looking forward to seeing those two approaches connect later in the series as well. Yeah, the Lux I've watched it twice so far, and to me, it's top tier Doctor
Yeah,
Who.
I do love the way they've kind of like I think I think the way they write it, like the thing which has always landed is like you say about the kind of woke of it all. It's like, you know, that anything that you is even slightly social messages has to be like, oh, you're hitting us over the head with it. I thought this was just really nicely done. They paid mention to like just being here, like it's probably best we're here at night because we were crying just being here. And it's so definitely put in there that it's referenced. It's definitely there. There's definitely things throughout the episode of the kind of racism of the time, but it's not so that if a kid was watching it, you could sort of like know there was something there, but not have to know everything about that time, not have to know, you know, it's instructional without being kind of intrusive to the story. I think it worked really well, and they just struck that tone perfectly.
That's true. I mean, I was thinking about Robot Revolution, and there's a lot of people going, "Oh, she says Planet of the Incels." Do you know what? Do you know what? Do you know what? Regardless of whether you think that's on the nose message-wise for the show or not, it's exactly what that character of that age, from the time in history which it came with, would think and say. And that's the point. Is there's no way that a young woman who ends up on an alien planet and her ex-boyfriend has turned out to have taken his control freak nature to its would not think Planet of the Incels. So it's a very accurate line. And it's so people go, oh, well, you just said Planet of the Incels. It's like, oh, also, this is just the only reason people have any issue whatsoever with the political content of Doctor Who is because when they didn't understand the taxation system enough when they watched The Sunmakers, or they'd have seen that that was exactly bang on the nose as well. They didn't understand. They weren't. They weren't subsumed
You and
by.
Paladon.
They weren't consumed by ecological concerns when they watched The Green Death. It's all there. It's always been there, and I very but now. Is it always a fine line when you're walking and you're trying to talk about something that message overcomes story? Of course it is. That's a writer's job, is to walk that line, and sometimes you're going to fall one side or the other. But this idea that Doctor Who has become woke is lunacy.
Oh,
Absolutely.
definitely. Yeah. And just there's a sort of economical value to this episode as well, even though kind of with the animation and stuff, I'm sure that kind of took care of any budget they might have had spare. But it's like, it's two locations. It's the cinema and it's a cafe and outside of the TARDIS. That's it. And that's just so nicely done. It's like, and the way they build up the tension with that, I thought worked really well. And kind of came to the diner was very atmospheric. You just had one person serving, one person at the thing. The fact that it's 15 people trapped seems, you did touch on the coincidental side to the 15th Doctor to me. So I think that maybe might be something to do with Mrs. Flood's master plan. I definitely think the fourth wall breaking is she's the god of storytelling. Like, I think
we have an episode coming up called The Story in the Engine. We have an episode coming up called The Reality War. Everything hinges on the salt from Wild Blue Yonder. It's about the walls of reality breaking down. It's all seeded in there. We've been going. This is an era which is because of a decision that the Doctor makes. The walls of reality and storytelling have been bending, and that's what this whole era is about. So I really think it is about landing the end of that arc, and that arc has, from the beginning of the specials right through to this series. So I should be curious to see where it's going.
And bring in Billy West, like as Lux. It was Billy West, wasn't it? Who did the voice?
No, it was Alan Cumming.
Was that Alan? That's why I meant to look it up. I knew I recognized the voice, but it's like he is doing a sort of. It does remind me of some of those Billy West kind of bigger.
Yeah, no, I absolutely can see hearing that. No, it's Alan Cumming. Alan Cumming is Mr. Ring-a-Ding.
Makes sense too. But it. I thought it was just like again perfectly pitched of being kind of fun, silly. Kind of is so reminiscent of the kind of like Steamboat Willie kind of almost style of animation before he became Mickey Mouse. You know, it's
Yeah.
it felt like that kind of era of it. And of course, kind of again, another great thing, which both RTD, Moffat, pretty much all the showrunners do really well is to bring in that kind of whole thing of like the scary in the everyday. That's why the Daleks in London was the scary thing, because it was in a familiar setting on Earth in the everyday. So that kind of famous picture of them going across the London Bridge.
Yeah.
That's exactly what this is. It's a fun kind of silly little what do they call them back then? The like it's a Vimto, whatever they call the little animation thing. There's a term for that, and like the animation short before the film. Anyway, doesn't matter. The short before the film, it very much encapsulated that very nicely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and the God of Light and using that towards movies, I think also is kind of like it feels a perfect fit for Doctor Who, because like we who are nerdy about kind of TV and sci-fi tend to be a bit film nerds as well. So that kind of link there was very nicely done, I thought. With the bit where the kind of Doctor goes into animation, kind of I did like that. Again, like the fact they were using Gallifrey and like them talking about that as the thing that he reveals, again, just to me felt a bit like dumb, but like that was, for me, I also like kind of there to be, as well as the motion content of why it kind of like made them more 3D and more substantial. I kind of I miss a bit of sci-fi in this. Like I want some sci-fi explanation in there as well. I don't know what do you think of the kind of expanding out as they try to escape the film?
Well, I mean, the thing is that we're in this era, we're in fantasy territory as opposed to so I think emotional. I mean, Russell Davies has always gone for emotional analog over hard sci-fi explanation. Just as Moffat liked to play with like structure and
there's more towards the sci-fi, I guess. One.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing is when you're dealing with a god of light and sort of these paranormal creatures, I think it doesn't really. I think vibe is more important than explanation, because it's the thematic content of the episode as opposed to sort of but you know, it's that, I mean, when I write sci-fi, I find a similar thing. This isn't like total cross pollination because I feel a little bit of a traitor, but I've just written a Tomorrow People novella for Official Range, and I write very much from a sort of emotional, psychological perspective, and then you are going back and auditing, trying to create a structure that hangs together in terms of the science fiction explanations for things and trying to make it make sense. And you're always trying to walk that line. But I always write the psychological, emotional stuff first, and then retroactively fit the sci-fi explanation to it, because from a storytelling perspective, the emotional content is more important, because it's what people really feel. But then I know writers that go completely the opposite direction. So yeah, I like that whole sequence, and the more that sequence of them breaking out of the film, the more elements of it I felt would annoy some people, the more I liked it.
Fair. Now, I guess I think what I've kind of just been, I don't know, it's kind of curious, because I agree with the RTD thing of like Doctor Who can be so many things to so many people, it can go to so many different areas.
Yeah.
But there have been times in this new era, in the last series and this one, just a few times where I watch and go, it's like, what makes this uniquely Doctor Who versus another science fiction? Like, even in the first episode of this series, it was kind of very TARDIS-like. The Sonic was in, I think, one of the scenes it was used, but it was kind of those usual touches. And where this is the first Doctor who's kind of a fashionista, which I love. especially love that for Chuti because he looks good in everything.
Yeah.
But it is like, it's just interesting where you kind of got so many of those touchstones not there. I don't know.
But I think those touchstones are there because they are Doctor Who ideas. In Robot Revolution, you do not get another show where robots kidnap someone because their controlling boyfriend 17 years ago bought them a star. That's a Doctor Who idea. There's not a franchise that I can think of that real Star Wars wouldn't do that. Star
Black
Trek
Mirror?
wouldn't do.
Black Mirror?
Black Mirror might, but Black Mirror is coming from a writer, Charlie Brooker, who's steeped in Doctor Who. Who's there are endless episodes of Black Mirror where I think this is the kind of Doctor Who that Charlie Brooker would write. You know, he's a longtime fan and particularly a fan of the Revive series. If you look back on any of his wipes from the year when it came out, he was one of the biggest supporters. The fact that Charlie Brooker is so successful and busy is, I think, the only reason why we haven't had Charlie Brooker writing for Doctor Who. But yeah, I think Black Mirror is an extension of a particularly British type of science fiction, and that has an awful lot to do with Doctor Who. I think, you know, it's like I said, my favorite classic writer of Doctor Who is Douglas Adams, because Douglas Adams' ideas were all very Doctor Who ideas, even through Hitchhikers. Those are Doctor Who style ideas. The idea of a cartoon coming to life who is also a god of a pantheon, and also the characters also get trapped in animation, and also then there's a meta thing where they're trapped amongst their own. There are all elements that have been done in different ways. Doctor Who's the great magpie of science fiction. Even from its very beginning, it drew on a lot of the sort of written science fiction of the time and filtered it through a Doctor Who lens. You know, you look at things like Horror Fang Rock. It's a Hammer horror story told through a Doctor Who lens. Same with Brain of Morbius.
There's quite a few Hammer horror-esque in that era. Yeah.
Doctor Who, the things that make it a Doctor Who story is a certain flexibility of imagination that I don't, these first two episodes, they've felt sort of very core Doctor Who in terms of, well, here's the episode where, you know, Robot Revolution probably, like, I'll say I've never been a huge fan of Russell T Davies series openers, because they've always been a bit light and frothy, and that's not my favorite type of Doctor Who. And I thought Robot Revolution was one of my favorites of that type of season opener, which is a bit more of a romp. But I've got nothing against a romp. Don't get me wrong. I like fun. But it had some thematic weight to it as well, and a really good Doctor companion dynamic. But this is the thing as well, and I think this, when people say Doctor Who is silly, and then they say it as though that's a derogatory thing, when silliness is the single most important attribute that the human being possesses in the entire universe. Our capacity to be silly is vital, and it's a very British thing. It's, you know, silliness is what British people have instead of emotions.
It's because I think also any society which has traditionally taken itself so seriously has to have that silly side to it. Otherwise, we'd just be even more unbearable than we are as British people anyway.
Yeah, because life is absurd. Life is utterly absurd. I don't know how anyone can take it seriously. The entirety of life is to trying to stay alive long enough to die. I mean, how can you take that construction seriously? It's an absurd thing. Existence is absurd to its very. If you take it what has happened, and why there's always this cognitive dissonance in the fandom, is that it's, and then why it's the older fans as well that tend to react against it, is because they've been passionate about Doctor Who since the year dot, and they've been made fun of for it. And so they want their show to be serious and dark and brooding so that they can go, see, it's a serious thing. You shouldn't have made fun of me for it. No, you should be celebrating the fact that Doctor Who is ridiculous.
One of my favorite like moments of New Who was Robots of Sherwood. And it was that moment when, like, you know, and I was getting that like little bit of a grumpy thing of like, yeah, but it's Robin Hood, like Robin Hood is real. And then that line at the end, it's like, I'm as real as you are, Doctor. It's like, yep, all right, I see what you did. Yep, fair enough. Yep, my bad. And I loved the episode because of that line. I love the fact they kind of had, I think it was very purposeful that Moffat wanted us to be like getting grumpy about it until that line, and then it's like, oh yeah, thank you. You know, it's like, thanks for
absolutely.
I appreciate that.
And there's all sorts of, you know, as I said, Doctor Who is the great modern British myth. You know, it's the character that kind of exists almost outside of the adventures. Like, lots of shows run for years and then get cancelled and are never heard from again. The fact that the Wilderness Years existed and a series of novels and then audio adventures carried the program on through that period is just testament to the elasticity and the possibilities of the format. There's always going to be different types of Doctor Who being told depending on who's in charge of the show at any time, and because it becomes about their reaction to Doctor Who and what type of stories the Doctor Who format allows them to tell, and it's what makes it. I just don't think I still maintain Doctor Who isn't like any other show on TV, because it can be incredibly dark and incredibly silly, oftentimes within the same scene. And to me, that's what makes it Doctor Who, is the capacity. And yeah, you can say that sometimes your mileage may vary on where the lines of silliness goes on. You might not like a burping bin, and you might not like a monster made of snot, but they're all part of the sort of constantly changing attempt to push all the sides of what Doctor Who can be. How silly can we go? How dark can we go? And yeah, it's you know, it's like the last series we got Dot and Bubble, which was borrowing back what Black Mirror had taken from Doctor Who, and then we also had 73 Yards, which was Welsh folk horror combined with time travel. I mean, you know, it's always about taking things and smashing them together and seeing what happens.
Well, you segue us on perfectly to the scene, which I guess may be the one that you were referring to earlier. Was it perchance when we ended up in our reality, if you will, right, a version thereof? I see. To me, like you, I thought it's like there is a version of that. Again, this is my opinion. Like, but there's a version of that I think might have been more what they were trying to do to my eyes. Like, I don't know. There's a version of that which I think would have worked a bit better for my liking. I think also the fact that the RTD, it's like, I don't know. There is something in his vision for this where he's talked about it, where he has specifically said about kind of like, even though he has always put story, like you say, in front of continuity, because that's the most important thing, which I do agree with. It's a particular sort of like, I don't want to say fuck you to continuity, but he's particularly Sarah's stall. He doesn't care about continuity at all. Like, he's talked about that in kind of pretty express terms. I'm paraphrasing, of course, but I miss some continuity, and I do like this. Just, I don't know. It's when he had like them saying, it's like, oh, I know we're annoying. It's like, well, it feels like he's trying to talk about. There was a little bit of me that kind of felt a bit like he was talking on behalf of the hands in a way. I don't know. That rankled me a little bit. I know.
The more uncomfortable it made me, the more I liked it, because it was. Yeah, I mean, there's part of me I don't like a broken universe. I like my fictional universes to have rules and lore and all of that. But if the one show that's going to suddenly throw um I'll tell you something. This is something when I teach writing that I always say.
Sure.
There is no story ever written that is set in the real world. Not one. It's not possible. Every single story ever written takes place in a parallel universe to our own. It may look, if you're a kitchen sink drama, it may look very, very, very close to your perception of what reality is. It may be about things that versions of happen in your reality, but it is still a parallel reality. So the idea that the God in story, that the gods would create a version of reality to trap the Doctor in that looked awful close to our actual reality of Doctor Who. I mean, it's not like the show's never done it before. In Remembrance of the Daleks, Doctor Who starts to play on the television as Ace is leaving the room.
this isn't quite my thing with it. Like, let me try and add a little bit to it. So basically, yeah. So like in Red Dwarf, they did this. They had like Craig Charles meeting Lister, like or meeting the other guys because Lister was conveniently not on screen at that moment. But anyway, point is, I like that was fine. Like I've seen those. It's not that I object to. I don't mind some fourth wall breaking. That's all good fun. I don't know. It was something about it was the same way as with like I liked that Robin Hood in that episode. They were talking to us as the audience, and they were saying something. It was like, "Oh yeah, you're right. I am taking myself too seriously." That's what that felt like. This just felt like a different level of like something about just saying like for me. I don't think we're any more silly than someone who watches sport all the time. Do you know what I mean? Like that. It hit me differently because it felt like RTD was trying to say it's like, well, we know we're annoying. It's like, well, no, I don't know I'm annoying. I just fundamentally disagree with that, and I felt like that was his way of saying that in the same way it's Moffat's way of saying that, and that's his opinion, his way of expressing it, and maybe it's just the way it was worded just didn't hit me right. I don't know. Just for some reason that just it took me out of it, that line. Something about it.
I don't know. That didn't bother me at all.
Yeah.
It just people who are passionate about anything are seen as misfits in the universe. It's a sad fact of life.
I'll take misfit.
But yeah,
I guess it's what people.
I thought it was done with affection. I think the biggest thing that people misunderstand is that each one of those characters is Russell T Davies as well.
Yeah.
Russell T Davies. Watch Russell T Davies' argument, and he's got the same backdrop you have. Like he's got Target novels on a shelf and TARDISes, and it's not because he's a television producer. They were there before he ever got Doctor Who. He's a fan. Like it's like he's been riffing on Doctor Who fans, both he and Moffat, since Queer as Folk and Moffat in the fourth series of Coupling. There's always been the hardcore Doctor Who fans who come in for a bit of an affectionate.
But I don't know. There's something when. Again, it might just be the way it hits me personally. I don't know. Just there's something about the way that you can take the. I find when sort of sci-fi takes the piss out of sci-fi fans, it doesn't. At its best, it doesn't in a way that it's like it's kind of like it's the piss take that everyone else might not think to do. And I know you've got to make it accessible for everyone. But saying that we're annoying felt like the piss take that everyone would do. Do you see that? That for me was where it lost me. Just I don't know, things like that. Just rankle me when I like it's in Big Bang Theory. At its best, it like the storyline where Sheldon had a shirt, like he made Leonard wear a shirt which made him itch all the time, which like was a metaphor for how he feels every day. That was it was something different. I hadn't seen that in a show. It was a clever way of doing something which says says something different about the same kind of scene that we might have seen before. I don't know. It just seemed lazy to say that we're annoying. I don't know. Obviously, just me.
I think I think it's a healthy bit of self-awareness to be aware that some of the pernicketiness that comes in with fandom, some of the tearing things apart and kvetching online about stuff and overthinking it is annoying. It is annoying. I've never been on a Doctor Who fan, and I am like honestly, I know production codes and weird shit that like is of no use to me in real life whatsoever. But when I see someone, if I saw someone online going, I'm taking a mark off because they telegraphed the ending in the middle and all that, and I'm like, I would be like, that's annoying. But at the same time, I think people are concentrating on that line when the line to me that was the epitome of the scene and the intent of the scene was where she said, "But I met my two best friends."
Yeah. Oh yeah. Then that I love. Yeah.
I mean, an extraordinary amount of hardcore Doctor Who fans who post online are extremely annoying.
I'm not saying we can't be annoying. I guess I like the show which is taking the piss from the inside the house, if you like.
Yeah.
I like when they say it a bit differently to the way any other show would do. Like it's just got that little bit more knowing. I don't know what it is. It's just like this seemed like a line that any show could say about sci-fi nerds. So we've got that covered. Yeah.
But the thing is, I think the important thing is, and I think people forget this about everyone who makes the show, is Russell Davies is talking about himself.
Yeah, I get that, but like, yeah. I don't know. I see your argument, sir.
Yeah, I think there's a version of that scene that would have pleased some people a lot more, that would have been softer and would have been cowardly.
I think I enjoy it because like it's not to do with like something else softer. I don't want, but it's like I almost like if they even go harder on us, but they say it in a way that I don't think another show would do. I think we can take the piss out of ourselves better than they can. That's actually probably my argument. We can do it like in a way no one else has, which other people would get, but we'll go, oh, that's I don't know. It's just
I see your argument as well. It didn't. And the more people bitch about it online, the more I like that scene. The more I like that scene. Like, because they did it, because they went for it. And like Russell Davies has been a Doctor Who fan all his life before he was ever in the show. When he was a writer in the Wilderness years, and of course there were more blowjobs in his Doctor Who stories than there are now, to a factor of one.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's still like the odd kind of line that Shooty gets in there, which is quite.
Yeah. But he's not. I don't think he's ever talking down. But also as a writer, I mean, Jesus Christ, the amount of his life that must be sort of diminished in joy by dealing with the type of people who post online. I can only imagine. But I still thought it was affectionate, and I thought the fact that it was the Doctor says, no, you're not annoying. The Doctor, is. Yeah, no, it didn't bother me, and I can only think of. I can only think of one other show off the top of my head that really kind of broke its format that way, and that might have been like. It was either Hercules or Xena that used to have a regular run of stories that were set in the writer's room of the show. That was like a format breaking thing that they used to do. Yeah, I think it's the scene's existence, whether you like it or not, is evident of the show still having life in it, because it's willing to take weird swings. And Metinus, like, it's like I don't really like Metinus in anything else, but I can stand it in Doctor Who, because the whole thing for me with Doctor Who canon, when it's strays, it's just I just go back to something. I think it was Steve Moffat said, there was a time war, you know. Every possibility is now open to. It's like there are things where I have two brains. Like I have a fan brain that goes by generation, rah, and then I have a writer brain that goes, why not? Why not?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I wish it'd just been by generation. I just wanted to be more of a just pulling apart. Just I wanted a big explosion of two people, not just pulling each other. That was my only objection. I didn't mind. Yeah, fine. If you want, that's cool. I do also think the thing of like, and as it happens, I just happen to have some, in this case, bi-generational energy spare as opposed to regenerational energy.
But I don't
That's
think
a convenient MacGuffin that's been used.
I'm not sure that that's just a MacGuffin though. But I think everything going back to the specials is built into what's happening in universe at the moment.
Oh, that's very possible. I just meant
by
like,
generation and everything.
Yeah, like the cut off hand was the excess regenerational energy, and within 15 hours of the regeneration, so he can do this, and within this amount of I saved a bit back for the bi-generation. It's like, all right, he's a magic god now who can just shit power out. I don't know. It just.
But I think I have this gut feeling that the finale is going to hook around all of the weird stuff that's not been picked up. That the universe is actually broken because the Doctor allowed these forces of chaos into the universe in Wild Blue Yonder.
Yeah. I just think it's like I don't know, just the whole thing of whenever like there's we need to end this. Doctor had a bit more regeneration energy. It's for me, I'd call it with that. But anyway, he shoots a thing out, which does lead very nicely into Lux being able to then sort of try and siphon off all the energy. So I did like the way it kind of built into it. I would like to have had a different engine, because we kind of used that I had a bit of spare energy thing a few times.
You could call that consistency.
you could, but it's a very convenient thing you can use every time. I've just got some magic power, basically.
Yeah, but I think it's that. I think the problem is for the diehard fan. If we've been using that all the time, when was the last time really? What?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a one and done.
Angels Take Manhattan. You know, that's like a decade ago.
No, I'm not saying they use it every episode. I'm just, it's like this sonic screwdriver, like RTD said himself. You want it to be able to, like, you want things to stop the Doctor, but you don't want it to be a door. So the sonic is like, but you don't want it to be magically able to fix every situation, even though RTD himself put extra abilities on it. It was never kind of like, or it was rarely episode ending that you had the sonic. I feel like it should be the same with regenerational energy. You can do that trick once, but even once every 5-10 years, whatever, it's like magic. Like you win. It's kind of it's. I don't know.
You know, I see where you're coming from. It doesn't bother me, but I see where you're coming from.
Sorry, I was just going to say, very nice wrap up to the episode. I did like the whole thing. Again, they kind of, even in that my celebration, it was nicely kind of like, and I thought very deftly done of like having that kind of, like, thanks for saving the day, but you are still not white. So, you know, it's like having that in there and not kind of like going easy on that, I thought was extremely important. And for anyone who says that they hit you over the head with stuff in this series, which I've argued against constantly. There's only a few instances where I've said, well, actually, for my liking, I think that one. But if you say it about one or two, that's different to like if you say every time there's a social issue that they hit you over your head, that might be your issue, not theirs. You know?
Yeah, precisely. And also sometimes, things that are talking to a wide audience, I think there are times where there are things that are serious enough you need to hit people over the head with them, because there are people, because clearly, if you pick up a newspaper, there are people who have been hit over the head with these things repeatedly and seem to have developed nothing but a concussion. So I think they need to be hit over the head with them a few more times.
Yeah. My mum reads the mail. How did you know?
it's the idea. Oh yeah, it's. I don't know. I have a fundamental issue with the idea that all things have to be dealt with subtly, and some things you just have to shout about. And yeah, I mean, it's story by story. Your mileage may vary on terms of what you think is. I always worry, like you said, the people that complain about it all the time, who think they're constantly being confronted with things they have to think about. It's like, well, why does it bother you so much to be confronted with that thing? To me, that says, I think this might be a you problem.
And this,
like if someone says Planet of the Incels and you feel personally attacked, you've got some hard questions to ask yourself. I feel like if you're like, oh, that was aimed at me, was it? Oh God!
And that's a really great example of how tonally they were different, but they fit the episode. So that in that one, I felt like that guy had to be a large about being a prick. Like he had to be for that to work. Whereas with this, I think it suited the episode very nicely. You could have complex characters who had this huge flaw of being a racist, but they could also do some good things, and I like that complexity, and that fit this episode better. So I do also like it when the amount of tone and light and shade and whatever else they give an episode just fits in the episode. Like I don't mind hitting me over the head with something if it's a hit me over the head episode, and if it's a more subtle episode, which I think, funny enough, even though you've got a cartoon and the Doctor and his companion become a cartoon, in many ways I thought this episode was actually quite light and subtle in other kind of themes. And if you'd had the race theme being more central, it completely changes what this episode is.
It's a different story, and I think. Well, I think where Rosa, for instance, is an episode that I loved a lot of, but I felt like the villain was massively underwritten. And I think it's a tough one because when you hit a subject that's of such vital importance and such historical longevity, sadly, then if you're going to tackle it, you have to tackle it. That's got to be your story, because otherwise you're going to be glancing off serious issues. But if you ignore it, like if they ignored it in this, that you've got two actors of color in an era of segregation, if you ignored it, then it would have stripped any veracity out of the setting. And it presented a wide variety of people who. It's like you said, there are characters in Lux that clearly don't have sort of deeply held racist beliefs because they don't care. They'll bend the rules, but they don't stand up against the rules either. And that's the complexity, that it just happens and you're left to go away and think about that afterwards, which is good too. I mean, I think, it's one of the great things that I really like about the upcoming run of new writers is that it is a diverse group, and they've obviously made an effort to cast a wide net and find a diverse group of writers. But these are all incredibly accomplished and talented writers. So anyone who starts, it's like people who call Shooty a DI hire as though he didn't have the career he had before he got to Doctor Who. He hadn't proved, and also the self-same people who bitch about diversity, the same ones who go, "Well, we set the same stories over and over." Well, maybe write storytellers with different perspectives. I wonder what could accomplish that. Oh, diversity, you numpty. the benefit of diversity is everything, particularly in creativity. Diversity and creativity means you are opening up to stories you won't have been told before because you're people who have had a very different experience of walking through the world, and therefore their perspective on everything from a hard-hitting 1 hour drama to a science fiction romp is that they are processing their story through the experiences that they've had and the things that they've been through, and they're bringing something new to it. So by having people who've walked the world in a different way, you're going to get the creation of new worlds that function in a different way as well. It's only to the benefit of the show and of television in general. You know, it's I think it's vital to on a purely pragmatic basis. The thing, like, there was an interview, I think it was Radio Times, with Shuti and Verda, and Jodie said very similar things in interviews, that what everyone's working towards is a time when having a doctor companion team that's non-white or a woman in the doctor's role, that we're working towards the time when we don't notice, when those things are just become so part of the fabric that it's cast on personality and those metrics, which it is, but that's not a big deal anymore because we've done it so often and so naturally that it's no longer something worthy of discussion. But we're never going to get there if we don't do it on purpose in the society that we have right now. And if we don't, and you know, if Doctor Who doesn't tackle societal issues, then the younger part of the audience doesn't have a show that's teaching them that kindness and tolerance and awareness in a way. I mean, you know, the way in which Doctor Who has opened the minds of generations over the last 20 years. You know, it's like from when my children were like 3, 4, there was a pansexual adventurer on their screens, and they never blinked an eye when he kissed the Doctor. Didn't blink an eye. To the point that when they got to be when Peter Capaldi transgendered into Jodie Whittaker, it never crossed their minds that there was anything wrong with that or anything weird about that. They, you know, so I think people who do have a problem with those things, they don't really like Doctor Who. People who have an issue with the Doctor being a woman or being a black man or being any things have not been watching the show properly.
I think the only thing actually I'd wish, if anything, I wish we'd had a chance to explore more with Jodie, with kind of like how the Doctor's seen as a woman throughout history as opposed to as a man. They did go into it somewhat, but it was, I feel like there was so much more to explore.
And that becomes the thing that the writers have to wrestle with all the time, is they would get brickbats from one corner if they made that the pivot point of too many stories, and brickbats from another corner if they just let her be the Doctor and just be the Doctor. And so it's you can't win, so you have to just go with your gut, and you just have to go with the story idea that you have at the time. I mean, there are my favorite Jodie Whittaker story, bar none, is Villa Diodati, which I think is just one of the great Doctor Who episodes. But there's a beautifully written, and which Maxine Alderton, I would like to see her come back again, because that and Village of the Angels, which she also co-wrote, both excellent Jodie stories. But just that whole thing where Byron keeps calling her Mrs. Doctor, and she just keeps saying it's just the Doctor, I think said so much about the way in which women have to walk through the world being othered by dint of the gender they present with. And and the show's never going to get everything right, again, because it has the demerit of being written by human beings, and it's always going to be. I mean, look back. I don't think there was any malice in the writers of Talents of Weng Chiang. I don't think that they were racist writers. I think they were, but they never thought twice about using certain tropes from film and television of the time, because those were the accepted tropes of film and television at the time. It's like, again, it's things like, we don't often think about why things are wrong, because we with the social media sphere, when we shout about things being wrong, and sometimes we're right, those are wrong. Take blackface, for instance. It's wrong. It wouldn't be in a perfect world. People playing other nationalities. There's no moral error in playing another part of the human species that happens to have a darker skin color or whatever. It's because of the horrible, horrible historical lineage of that being used to mock and diminish, and also steal opportunities from people who were there waiting to play the part and had the talent. If that hadn't happened, we could all play whatever we wanted to play. There's no like moral issue with playing someone from another race. The moral issue is contributing to the lineage of something that diminished and mocked and removed opportunity from people. We're in a moment of redressing balance, and I'll be very interested to see how these episodes, now that they are being decried in one corner for being woke, are viewed in 20 years' time, when we've worked through some of our cultural battles that we're having right now.
Yeah, and I'll sort of head towards wrapping up on this one, but it's like, it's that I'm also fascinated to see how this plays out with all the changes which are being thrusted upon through extortion, basically, on the industry and on many things at the moment, where Doctor Who is kind of obviously standing against that, and Pub was made before, but I think RTD would have always made this vote, like he wouldn't have compromised. But it's kind of like, how does that stand up? How does that happen? Like, what happens next? Essentially, it'll be interesting to see. I think, obviously, RTD will never compromise or kind of go away from it. But it's like, does this iteration, this kind of strength of Doctor Who, survive that? And like,
is there going to be a showrunner? Is there going to be a showrunner that comes down the line that is less overtly passionate about those issues, and therefore, I mean, Russell T Davies writes the way he writes because he writes about the things he's passionate about. I find hilarious people. He's always writing about gay men. Well, he knows a lot of gay men, so he's writing about things that he knows, and he's passionate about issues surrounding that he and people he loves have experienced. But I mean, still, I've seen people online and go, "Oh, we've got that hack RTD." What, the writer of It's a Sin, one of the greatest pieces of television drama ever written? Get lost. And you may not like his Doctor Who stories. That's fine. You're allowed. You're allowed to not like things. That's fine. But I genuinely don't understand why people go online to talk about things they don't like. The older I get, the less interest I have about what people don't like. I'd very much like to hear about what they like. What are you passionate about? What do you love? What's your favorite thing? But it's human nature. But the constant tenor of conversation is how to be as snarky as you can about something that didn't work for you, and then pretend like you could do better.
I mean, I do love the fact that, like, and of course RTD would, but it's like, I love the fact they have made it so it's like, it's not the fact that it's a kind of, because it's the Doctor, he's danced with everyone as RTD wonderfully put it previously. That's fine, but like, I love the fact this is just an out gay Doctor. This Doctor fancies men. That's it. It's like, it's not blurred towards anything to sort of like appease anyone, if that makes sense. So you have had the Doctors who are kind of like who have been played as bi, who have been played as whatever else, and this is played as gay, and I like that it's not compromising in that way. If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and I think
I've just thrown a bit of straightness to make it okay for some people, basically.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it's a continuing journey. And I was like, Doctor Who is, for me, is I have zero interest in sport. I like sports movies for some reason, but I have zero interest in sport. It doesn't do it for me. But Doctor Who is the closest thing I have to a football team. I haven't always liked every side that the team has ever had as much as I've liked any other side. I've had my favorites. But I follow it. I follow it, and I'm passionate about the team and what it can be. I mean, there is a reason why I've been like circling it from a career perspective. I get so close so far. I mean, the Tomorrow People Novellas is like I'm loving that because it's playing in a different fictional universe. But like all the other writers of the novellas are all like a lot of the Big Finish writers from the Tomorrow People series, and I'm so close to getting into Big Finish. I'm just working my way around. I've written
Yeah,
for
when you
multiple
mentioned Tomorrow People to me before we started, I was like, "Oh, Big Finish!" Because I was excited for you. Like, but not that it isn't wonderful to write Tomorrow People anyway, but just because I know like how much it would mean.
Yeah, and I'm still I'm manifesting it out there in the universe. Mr. Briggs, I have form now. I've also written for multiple Doctor actors, and like I've written a Doctor Who spin-off. I've written the Tomorrow People. I have sci-fi form. Come on. But I mean, the thing is like I know what type of Doctor Who I'd write, and there would be elements in it that would be recognizable. I mean, Children of the Circus that I wrote, which is the sequel to Greatest Show in the Galaxy, thanks to Stephen Wyatt for giving us access to his characters, was close to the type of Doctor Who I'd write. And there's a healthy dollop of Douglas Adams in there. There's a dollop of Moffat in there. There's some RTD in there. There's some Christopher Bidmead in there, grumpy as he was, and it's like all Doctor Who taught me about a lot of different types of writing and a lot of different types of storytelling, and I'm still always interested in what it's going to do next. And I thought Lux was a really good example. I think it's a shame that a lot of the online discourse is Doctor Who's been another show that's been sucked into the so-called culture wars, but it remains a one-off on TV, and I think Lux was a really good example of one of the things it can do, which is to just go wild. And then looks like next week it's going to go scary again. So it's great. I still get that tingle when the next time comes in. I go, oh, what are they going to do next? I'm very curious. And we do have a run of new writers. I think RTD's co-written the next one with a new writer, and then there's two new writers, and I think Peter Harness is coming back for one as well. So yeah, I think we've got lots to come, and Ncuti, like Jodie, is the Doctor, and therefore has been added to my pantheon of favoritist actors ever. So by dint of inhabiting the role and doing their own thing with it. So,
and I've got to say, him in Sex Education, he already had me. Like the layers he put in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Blew my mind. Like as soon as I saw that, I was like, Doctor's fine. No problem. It'll be fine. Because I watched it after his announcement, and I just trawled through it, and he was my favorite in it. Like, and everyone else was great in it, but just something about his performance and all the shades he brought into it, and the kind of someone who was so passionate and just so themselves in some way, held back by the bullying in another. I could just really relate to that. It was amazing.
I mean, it is. I think only Matt Smith I had no knowledge of whatsoever. I think by dint he was only really just getting started. But like when I moved to England, one of the first shows I saw when I moved to England was Our Friends in the North. So I knew Chris Eccleston, and I followed him for a while before he became the Doctor. Peter Capaldi I knew. Jodie I knew would be great as the Doctor, not because I'd seen her in Broadchurch, but I'd also seen a film called Adult Life Skills that she's the lead in, which is one of the funniest, greatest films I've ever seen, and she's fantastic in it. It held the screen, and I was like, yeah, that's the Doctor. But yeah, it's curious. I think Ncuti's. I'm hoping Ncuti's still got a couple more series in him, really, because I think he's still got layers to unpeel for his Doctor. So
I really hope so. I think he is a tremendous Doctor. just because I like to mention, because as I said earlier, he's the fashionista doctor, and love that suit this week. Just
Yeah,
again, just then, if there's nothing that man can't wear, like he could wear a bloody bin bag and it would look fantastic.
That's another thing. It's like part of my fan brain is like I like it when he's in the leather coat. I like the Doctor silhouette of that. But I at the same time, the more him trying different outfits on which he all looks fabulous in all of them happens, the more I like it. Partially because it annoys people.
I think the only thing we have mentioned, like, I just a fun little ending of Mrs. Flood coming out of the end going, it's like, oh, a limited time run only. It must end on the whatever of May when the series. I just little, you see that lovely little bit of fourth wall business, brilliant.
Yeah.
Like, and Anita Dobson, she is so kind of sparing these episodes, and I'm always excited to see her, and just like there's always something in her performance, even doing that line, which was kind of fun. And last week, You Ain't Seen Me Right was kind of, I don't know, she's great, she's amazing.
I mean, I mean, that's the kind of thing online. I love the trying to figure it out. You know, I mean, people have noted that she's been dressed as Clara. She's been dressed as Romana. She's been dressed. Her outfit at the end of Lux was quite similar to Sally Sunshine. It was actually on the other character that was on the screen. So there's all sorts of things, and you know, I'm curious to see, and I have this feeling it probably won't be any of the theories that people have posited, although it may well be, because sometimes, you know, when Russell T Davies in particular is going for broke, you will get maybe it is the Ronnie. Who knows?
You did say someone had cracked it online, so we shall see what comes down the pike. If it's one of the more mentioned rumors or not.
Yes, exactly.
As always, thank you very much for joining me. Always
my pleasure
to be with you.
I like to rant about stuff.
Don't we all love? For Gallifrey Stands this week, I've been Dr. Squee, and joining me as guest companion this week has been
Kenton Hall.
And until next week, live like you've got two hearts, and